not how it gets to people. We did an experiment at Nendo, my firm, a few years ago, and part of what we asked was how many megabytes are the story and how much is what we call ad tech. And from what we could tell, in some cases, again, this is years ago, so times have changed, but up to 70% of it was ad tech in some cases. And the idea with this was that people are going to different browsers like Opera Mini saying, I need you to eliminate ads, and I need you to shrink the internet for me. And that's part of what we've seen and noticed. And more brands like Phoenix, like Scooper, like Opera News are pursuing Africans with that promise. We will eliminate ad tech, but we'll also give you an algorithm that sets the table for you and the agenda. Even African Stream that we've seen some time back, when we ask who's funding this news, we see players like them who've built up hundreds of millions of views, but as it would turn out, allegedly, from this letter from Secretary Blinken, are a front for Russia Today, allegedly, and presenting Kremlin propaganda, weaponizing, allegedly, Pan-Africanism and a number of ideas with a hidden hand. And many Africans online were skeptical, asking where you're getting your funding, etc. And when this came out, they were sanctioned, meaning they lost their Gmail, Google Drive, YouTube, social media platforms, but it raises the question of who's funding that news, right? Who pays for the news that gets to me and gets onto these algorithms to reach me and potentially millions or hundreds of millions of other Africans? And it's hard enough to keep media funded. So when we ask the question, and as I end, this question has so many layers to it. And the players that we see playing now are not your usual suspects. It's been the US and the UK, Germany and others. But when we look today, we see CGTN out of China who've been here longer than a decade. We see TRT, for example, who in our view have come in with a very similar playbook around reflecting on African history and the more unflattering parts for Western or formerly colonial legacies on the continent. And all of them are racing. But the unseen hand in all of this is the three organizations I shared. Ooh, sorry. These three organizations I shared, like Scooper, Opera Mini, and others. And it's time we ask the question, not just of the news we make, but how it gets to the audiences. Thank you very much.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's appreciate again Mark Kaigwa, who has just spoken about who owns your news, African digital media in the age of foreign influence. Now, he was speaking as the founder of Nendo, and I'm sure that presentation will be available for us. On stage, ladies and gentlemen, we have Khalil Hassimali, and he is a media consultant from Mauritius. And he's modest to say this, but he is the head of special projects at The Conversation, How Journalism Can Win Hearts and Minds Again.
Hello. Hi. Thanks so much for having me. So I'll get straight into it. Today I'll talk about a model that is taking the industry by storm. It's called the user needs model. And the reason why it's taking the industry by storm is because it's really allowing newsrooms all over the world to provide even more value to people, to their audiences. Very quickly about me, I'm Khalil, I'm from Mauritius. I'm sometimes mistaken for a bed from Community, which I don't mind, but with a Bridgerton accent. Posh accent, I mean, not so much. But more seriously, I'm a consultant, and I've helped media organizations in different parts of the world implement the user needs model, and you'll see some of the results here. So I have to say that when I talk about user needs, I do feel a little bit uneasy, just because the need for this model really shows us or tells us quite a lot about the state of the industry. And the state of the industry, I mean, we know this, right? Newsletters, newspapers are not doing great. News websites, are not doing great. I mean, it's not great, right? It's not great. Why is it not great? Just trying to get this to work. Why is this not great? I mean, you know, website of the year. No comment, but basically, you know what's happening, right? There is a lot of things that we do within the industry that is causing a lot of harm to people. We are consistently disconnecting people from one another, and we are consistently disconnecting ourselves from people. And we see the impact, we see the consequences of this every day. We experience this directly. We read about those things. We know those are happening, and we are part of why those are happening. I went a bit forward here, but we are doing all of those things, but the good thing is we can do something about it. And doing something about it starts with recreating connection with people. Because only when we reconnect with people can we understand people. And only when we understand people can we be valuable to people. And once we're valuable to people, we can start rebuilding the trust with people. How do we do this? So this is the user needs model. It will show up. There we go. And the user needs model came out of research from a lot of people, thousands, tens of thousands of people around the world. Research done a decade ago by the BBC. And they found that when it comes to news, people need to know what's happening. People need to understand what's happening. People need to feel something about what's happening. And people need to do something about what's happening. You will see from this model that we're going quite deep into why people consume news, right? This model is not telling journalists what it is that they can and cannot write about. It acknowledges the intuition and the experience of journalists. It is merely providing journalists with different lenses, with different ways into articles. Those are the different needs that people want to be served, and those are the different ways in which us in the media, content creators, storytellers, those are different ways in which we can tell the stories and do our journalism to better serve people. And when we apply this model to the journalism process, those are some of the articles that you get. I'm sure you'll recognize some of those articles. For example, a breaking news story that would cater to the update me need. But you also see quite a lot of other types of articles that maybe are less represented in our news coverage. Inspire me stories, connect me stories. Connect me stories are really important. They really place us in the context of the world in which we exist. Whether that's the community we're part of, the country that we're part of, humankind as a whole, the entire planet. It really helps reconnect people with one another. So this is the user needs model. And this is what happens to media organizations before they use the user needs model. So if you look at the green columns, what you're seeing is we produce a lot of update me articles, right? The green columns show a number of articles. Whoops. I did go to the next one. Well, let me just go back very quickly.
As you do that, we're just finding out how to get reconnected with our presentations here as well. So don't worry about that, Khalil. Carry on.
But basically what we're seeing here is we're overproducing certain types of stories. So you're breaking news stories, what just happened. But we're really not producing a lot of some of the other types of stories. Inspire me, connect me, divert me, help me. Not that much. Now look at the green line, which is average page views per article across the different user needs. And you see the mismatch. Those stories that we're publishing quite a lot about, don't get that much traffic. But those stories that we're not publishing a lot about, way more traffic. There's much more interest. The graph shows page views. You can replace page views with other metrics. For the more businessy of you, conversion metrics. how engaged people are with our journalism, all of those metrics will show you the same thing. There is a mismatch between what we're producing and what people are actually looking for. We need to bridge that gap. We need to bridge that mismatch to be able to provide more comprehensive value to people. And when we do this, this is what we get. BBC News Russia, for example, tripled its audience by publishing 60% fewer articles because they focused on the specific needs of their audiences. The Conversation, a global organization, not-for-profit, same great results. The user needs model works for big organizations with a lot of money, like the BBC, works for non-profit organizations, like The Conversation. It also works for more niche publications, like Omroep Brabant, which is a regional publisher in the Netherlands. They're all seeing really, really good results. They're all seeing how they are being able to reconnect with their audiences by focusing on their needs. There are so many news organizations nowadays that have or are implementing user needs. Those are just a few examples. There are literally hundreds now. And they're doing it because it works. So if you're interested in this, and if you want to explore this a little bit more, there will be a slide that will eventually show up that will help you do this. We can reconnect with people with the user needs model. It does not take a genius to get started. There's a QR code on the screen. Scan it, you'll get a free how-to guide to start implementing that way of thinking within your newsrooms. You can sign up to a free email course that I wrote, which goes through every step takes you to every step of the way and really helps you reconnect with your audiences. Because what I will say is, remember that if we do not reconnect with people, people will continue to disconnect from us. And at some point, we have to ask ourselves, if everyone is disconnected from us, what is even the point of us existing in the first place? Shouldn't let that happen. The user needs model is a way to prevent that from happening, to be more valuable to people. I really encourage you to give it a go. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Khalil Hassimali, media consultant from Mauritius. And now we are going to hear from Hannah Ajakaye, founder of Facts Matter Nigeria, speaking their language, how Pidgin English is fighting misinformation in West Africa.
Hello. Hello. How in a day? Waiting they happen. I beg making a clap. I need energy on this stage. Okay, so I'm going to talk about how Fact Matter NG is using Pidgin language to reach young people and underserved audiences in Africa. We know that everywhere in West Africa, people are talking, debating and sharing information. It is a vibrant space. And most time, the language of communication, fact about Pidgin English, Pidgin is a lingua franca that is born from slavery and colonial trade. At the moment, it has like over 75 million speakers in Nigeria, in Ghana, Sierra Leone, and some other countries in West Africa. And we know that it's a language that transcends ethnic and educational barriers. And one of the fascinating facts for the adoption of Pidgin English as a medium of communication, both in formal and informal spaces, is the fact that, of course, people can easily use it, but again, the fact that it's a language that uses the cultural nuances of people. And in 2017, the BBC launched a Pidgin English service, and that's kind of validated the use of Pidgin as a language of communication in the media spaces. So at Facts Matter NG, we are proving that Pidgin English can empower online communities. We have seen that it is a vital tool that we can use to build media literacy and develop news judgment, especially when we are trying to reach young and underserved audiences. And one other thing that I would like to mention is that the rise in the adoption of Pidgin English can be related to the shifts in the demography in West Africa, where over like 63% of the people in West Africa are young people below the ages of 25. Okay. So, slider. So, false information, we know that false information is often debunked in official languages, leaving many people behind. There are like over 2,000 languages in Africa. And sometimes people consume news in local languages. We have a thriving media landscape in Nigeria where you have news in Yoruba, Hausa, and the rest. But sometimes you don't have fact-checking or media literacy content in those local languages. So we are leaving a larger percentage of the population behind. And when you proceed, you see that misinformation in the way it is packaged and disseminated is emotional. Like it touches the cultural beliefs of the people. And we believe for you to be able to counter this information, we also need to key into this culture and key into the emotional aspect of how you can distribute verified information. And Pidgin is quite helpful in being able to pass that message across. So the key question that has been like a challenge for fact checkers across the continent is how do we make credible content engaging and accessible to the people who need it most? Many people that I've met to tell me, especially young people, they'll be like, fact checking is boring. So how do you want to make it interesting? So for us, this is some of the things that we have tried. We've created Pidgin content that has helped to simplify complex national issues, issues around renewable energy and like compressed natural gas. We've been able to use Pidgin English to break that down. We've used Pidgin English to produce content, talking to Nigerians and educating Nigerians about the debt per capita for each person. And we've been able to also produce Pidgin English content talking about hard topic like VAT, like value-added tax. And most times when we see the comments and the reaction from people, we can really say that this is a very tangible means of breaking, simplifying hard news, and making content that will otherwise appear boring to be much more interesting. So what has been the result? We've seen like a greater engagement on our social media platforms. We've seen wider reach, and by the testimonies of the people that consume our content, we can say indeed that we are building a stronger resistance to falsehood and disinformation. Okay. So, when building up on what I said about some of the impact of our content and how we are reaching people, Pidgin English is actually viable for reaching millions across social media platforms in Nigeria. And we can see that using that language as a means to publish fact-checking, civic explainers, and media literacy content is helping to build the critical skills of people so that they can analyze information before they believe. And again, we are seeing a growing demand for fact-checking in local languages, proving that beyond Pidgin, we can also use Hausa language, we can use Yoruba language, another popular language in West Africa, to debunk disinformation and build the news judgment of people. And you can see from some of our comments here, people talking about, oh, this has helped to break disinformation down, and just speaking the language of the people so that they can better relate to the information and the ideas that you are trying to sell. So what is the future for us for Fact Matter regarding the use of Pidgin to debunk disinformation? We can say that the future of West Africa's information ecosystem would be written and spoken in the people's language. So enough of, using English or other official languages most of the time. Now we want to use Pidgin because we can see that even in the entertainment sector, even in official engagement or non-official engagement, there is a rising adoption of this language. Like I said earlier, it transcends ethnic and educational barriers. So it's a language that people are happy and free to adopt. And we can see that local language builds trust, because trust is the foundation of truth. And in this age where, there's a lot about foreign disinformation, the influence of foreign disinformation, and people usually do not trust the legacy media platforms, using Pidgin English or other local languages is a sure way to build trust with the audience. And I'll say that Pidgin English is not just a slang, it is a powerful tool for media literacy and civic engagement. And our work at Fact Matter has proved that, and going into the future, we want to invest a lot and push that message and means of communication forward. Okay, so my final thought is that the triumph of Pidgin English lies not in, it lies in the resistance to elitism. Like I said before, there is a distrust for legacy media platform. There's a distrust for anything signifying maybe elitism or Western foreign interests. So by transforming, saying maybe like a Pidgin word like how you day, from casual greeting to a rallying cry for accountability, then we can weaponize linguistic intimacy against digital falsehoods. And this is a call to action for everyone here. If you are working in the line of country disinformation, this is something that you should think about. How do you want to reach people in the language that they understand, in a language that they can relate to? So thank you very much, and I hope to maybe further the conversations. So please, now join our Bonga movements as we help people with better information. Thank you.
Thank you. Hannah Ajakaye, founder of Facts Matter Nigeria, speaking their language, how Pidgin English is fighting misinformation in West Africa. Next up is Sharon Deva, Program Director, Climate Exchange. Climate change is affecting food, music, and movies. Yes, really.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you. Look at this great space. I love it. Thanks to all of you. I'm super excited to be here and really invigorated because yesterday we also had a knowledge exchange with Climate Exchange, and we were so blown away by the amount of amazing innovations and ideas came out of it. So that is kudos to all of the great brains in this room. And what I also want to say is, Mark, thank you for teeing me up to say about courage, because we are a call to arms. There's lots of call to arms today, I believe, about rewriting climate journalism. And to do that takes quite a lot of courage, and it takes quite a lot of collaboration. And so where I'm from is from Climate Exchange, and Climate Exchange is really trying to shake up the media ecosystem through climate journalism. And so we have a few sort of radical ways of looking at this, but I just wanted to share a little bit of how I wound up here. So I'm not traditionally a journalist. I come from an advertising and communication space. So I worked in that industry for about 25 years. And you probably all know that the advertising industry has gone through some crazy changes. It's almost gone extinct from how I remember it. And so I was there one day talking to a friend, and I was really moaning about, why isn't media doing something about climate? Why aren't we harnessing the reach that all journalists have? Why aren't we using the skills of what brands know and what brands have used for years? And then I think maybe Google was listening to me, because the next day a job advertisement came up, and it was for Climate Exchange. So I was like, okay, and I called the co-founders, and they are very brave. They are two brave gentlemen who set up something called SULI, which is the overarching organization. And Climate Exchange is the first initiative which focuses on climate solutions in climate reporting. And so what we're really proposing is, yes, you know the industry is in disarray, you know that there's lots of shake-ups, but there's also a problem with how climate's being reported within it. So it's all about doom, gloom, fear, disaster, and there's disconnects. And I think you heard from Khalil about audience. our audience needs really being reflected in that reporting? Are people disconnecting for a very specific reason, that there's a lot going on in their lives, and climate is another very disturbing thing that maybe they can't just get their heads around in the way that we're talking about it? And so, what we're doing in our call to arms is basically, this came out from the IPCC, is that media shapes the discourse. So all of you in this room, you know it, you have the power to change the conversation around climate. And so what does that actually mean? How do we view it? We view it that there's a shift. We've mentioned the move away from legacy media, moving away from these negative echo chambers and moving towards something where we're coining it as cultural currency. So how do you build value in products? How do you build value in services? And how do you build the real need that people want to engage with your product because it's interesting, because it's maybe entertaining, because it maybe, as Khalil pointed out, answers many of their need states. And also, really importantly, as Hannah said, in languages and in ways that people can resonate with. So this is all about resonance and value building. And so we are looking at this from a cultural lens. And culture can mean many things, but for us, we looked at behavioral science, and we looked at how you can actually start to look and change cultures. And it's really about the customs and ideas of daily life. So what does that mean to you individually? What does culture mean to you as an individual journalist, where you grew up?